Welcome to the Deep Dive. Ready to get microscopic?
Let's do it.
Today we're going deep into the world of cells, how they work, how they connect, and what they can teach us about, well, everything.
From those college bio lectures we've been digging into to some personal stories that'll hopefully get you thinking.
I love that. It's not just about the facts, but about how this stuff affects us.
Exactly.
So to kick things off, we've got to start with the scientific method, right? The backbone of any good discovery.
Oh, absolutely. Observation, questions, hypotheses, the whole 9 yards.
One lecturer used this amazing example about, get this, cats, and how they show affection to humans.
Yeah. You can even study a cat's purr scientifically.
Who knew? So say you notice a cat seems to, really like one person over another.
Right, and that sparks a question. Why?
Is it because of who raised them? Early experiences?
You could test that. Imagine you've got groups of kittens raised by different people, and you control all the other stuff that might affect their behavior.
Then you need to measure that affection, right? Like how often they purr or how close they get to a person.
Exactly. Then analyze the data. Does it support the hypothesis or not?
That's so cool. Even something as, fuzzy as affection, you can approach it scientifically.
It's all about the evidence.
Which brings us to scientific theories.
Yeah, those were different from just isolated facts.
So it's more than just like a guess, right?
Oh yeah, way more. A scientific theory, like the theory of evolution, it's backed by a mountain of evidence from tons of studies. It's the best explanation we have based on what we know.
But, and I'm curious here, can those theories change?
Of course. That's what makes science so exciting. As we find new evidence, we might need to tweak things or even totally overturn old ideas.
So it's always evolving.
Always. It's a dynamic process.
Love that. Okay, from scientific thinking, let's zoom in way into the building blocks of life itself. Cells.
But before we jump into the cells themselves, a quick chemistry refresher might be helpful.
You're right. It's got to know the ingredients before you bake the cake.
Exactly. Everything around us, you, me, this table, it's all made of matter.
Stuff that takes up space and has mass.
Right. And matter is made up of elements, like the stuff on that periodic table.
That brings back memories.
And each element has its own unique properties. Some, like hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen, those are super important for life.
And then if we go even smaller, those elements are made up of atoms.
Right. You got it. Imagine an atom, like a tiny solar system.
Okay.
You've got the nucleus in the center, with protons, those are positively charged, and neutrons, those have no charge. And then whizzing around that nucleus, you've got electrons with their negative charge.
Like planets around a sun.
Perfect analogy. But here's something that'll blow your mind most. Of an atom is actually empty space.
Wait, seriously?
Seriously. If the nucleus were, say, the size of a marble, those electrons would be like tiny specks flying around in a giant stadium.
We're mostly empty space. That's wild.
It is, right. But that structure, that's what gives atoms their special properties. And it lets them link up, form molecules, create everything around us.
Speaking of that periodic table, I remember it's organized in a specific way.
It is. It's arranged by atomic number, which is just the number of protons in an atom's nucleus. So carbon, for example, it's got an atomic number of 6. 6 protons.
Right. And there's atomic mass, too.
Yep. That's the total number of protons and neutrons together. So for carbon, it's usually around 12. 6 protons, 6 neutrons.
Makes sense.
But then there's isotopes. Same element, same number of protons, but different number of neutrons.
Isotopes. Isn't that like radioactive stuff?
Sometimes. Carbon, for instance, has an isotope called carbon-14, and that one's radioactive. It's what we use for carbon dating.
Ah, carbon dating, to figure out how old fossils are, right?
Exactly. By measuring how much of that carbon-14 is left in something, we can estimate when that organism lived or when that, piece of wood was part of a tree, like a time machine.
I love that. Tiny changes in atoms telling us about history.
It's pretty incredible, right?
Okay. We've got atoms, elements, isotopes. But atoms don't just hang out solo, do they?
Nope. They team up to form molecules. They do this through chemical bonds, and a really important type, especially for life, is the covalent bond.
Covalent bonds. Remind me how those work again.
Think of it like atoms want a full outer shell of electrons, like it makes them stable and happy. In a covalent bond, they share electrons to get that full shell, like holding hands to complete a set.
Gotcha. And water is a great example of a molecule formed that way.
You got it. 2 hydrogens, 1 oxygen, sharing electrons to form H2O. And as we all know, water, pretty essential for life.
Absolutely essential. Which brings us to, drumroll please, DNA, like the instruction manual for building a living thing.
And it's a super complex manual. Picture it like a twisted ladder. That's the double helix. The sides are made of sugar and phosphate, and the rungs, those are pairs of nitrogenous bases, adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine.
Right, A, T, C, G. And A always goes with T, C with G.
Exactly. They're held together by hydrogen bonds, which are weaker than covalent bonds, but still super important for DNA structure.
And that whole structure, it's crazy long,
Yeah.
but somehow it fits inside those tiny chromosomes we see in pictures.
It's a packaging miracle. Picture DNA winding around proteins called histones, kind of like thread on a spool.
So all that genetic info fits inside the cell's nucleus. Amazing.
It's an organizational masterpiece, for sure.
Okay, we've journeyed from atoms to molecules to this incredible DNA molecule, ready to step into the cells themselves.
Let's dive in. The world of the cell awaits.
Cells, they're like these bustling cities, right?
Exactly, with all these different parts working together.
So we've got two main types, prokaryotic and eukaryotic, right?
You got it. Prokaryotic, those are like bacteria. Simpler, smaller, they don't have all the membrane-bound organelles that the eukaryotic cells have.
Those are the ones in, like, plants and animals.
Yeah, and fungi and protists, too.
Okay, so those organelles, it's like they're the different departments in our cell city, each doing their own thing.
Exactly. Like the nucleus, that's the command center, holding the DNA, running the show.
And then you've got those ribosomes, right? The little protein factories.
Churning out those proteins that the cell needs for, well, just about everything.
And I remember learning about the endoplasmic reticulum, the ER. It's like this whole network of, like, tunnels and channels inside the cell.
It is. It's involved in making proteins, processing fats, even detoxifying stuff. You've got the smooth ER, no ribosomes there, and then the rough ER, all studded with ribosomes, hence the name.
Makes sense. And then there's the Golgi apparatus,
Oh, yeah, that's like the sorting facility.
like the post office.
Yeah.
Making sure everything gets delivered where it's supposed to go.
Exactly. It modifies, sorts, packages proteins into those little vesicles.
Transport pods. And what about lysosomes? Those were always described to me like the recycling centers.
They are. They break down all the waste, the cellular junk, keep things clean, full of enzymes to digest all those molecules.
Then there are vacuoles, like the storage units.
Right. Holding water, nutrients, sometimes waste. Those are super important in plant cells, help them stay firm and upright.
And of course, we can't forget the mitochondria, the powerhouses.
Essential for cellular respiration. They take that glucose, break it down, release energy in the form of ATP.
The fuel for the cell.
Exactly, like the power plants of our city, keeping everything running.
It's amazing how all these different pieces work together, each one crucial.
It really is a beautifully coordinated system.
Now, plant cells, they have some extras that animal cells don't, right?
Yeah.
Like that rigid cell wall,
Yeah, it's made of cellulose, gives them that extra support and protection.
like a sturdy wall around the city.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are those green organelles that make plants so special, chloroplasts.
That's where photosynthesis happens, the magic of turning sunlight into energy.
They have their own solar panels.
Basically, it's essential for the plants, but also for us, for the whole planet. It's the basis of most ecosystems.
Okay, so we've had our tour of the eukaryotic cell, all the organelles. But I'm wondering, how does stuff get in and out in the first place? We talked about cell membranes, but I'm curious about the actual transport processes.
Good question. Those membranes, they're selectively permeable, meaning they control what comes and goes.
Like border control.
Yeah. You've got two main ways things cross: passive transport and active transport.
I remember those terms, vaguely.
Well, passive transport, that doesn't take energy from the cell. It's like floating downstream, going with the flow.
Okay.
One type of passive transport is diffusion molecules moving from high concentration to low concentration.
So, like, if you spray perfume, the scent spreads out till it's kind of even everywhere.
Exactly. Another type is osmosis, which is specifically about water moving across a membrane.
Like when water moves into a plant cell, making it nice and firm.
Precisely. It moves to even out the concentration on both sides.
So passive transport is all about going with the flow. What about active transport?
Active transport, that takes energy. It's like swimming upstream, moving stuff from where there's less of it to where there's more of it.
Why would a cell need to do that?
Good question. It's about maintaining certain concentration differences that are super important for things to work right, like Nerve cells use active transport to keep lots of potassium inside and less sodium outside.
So it's like the cell is actively pumping stuff against the natural flow.
Exactly. Uses special protein pumps to do it, like tiny machines powered by ATP.
Okay, so cells get stuff in and out, but how do they actually use those nutrients, that energy?
That brings us back to cellular respiration, that process of breaking down glucose to get ATP, like burning fuel to power a car.
And it all happens in the mitochondria.
You got it. They're the energy plants with all the machinery to carry out those complex reactions.
So ATP, that's like the cell's energy currency.
Perfect way to put it.
Now, plant cells, they have their own special energy trick, right? Photosynthesis.
Yeah. It's like the flip side of cellular respiration, using light energy from the sun, carbon dioxide from the air, and water to make that glucose.
So plants are basically making their own food.
Self-sufficient food factories, converting sunlight into chemical energy stored in those glucose molecules.
It's wild how photosynthesis and cellular respiration, they're like partners. Plants make the glucose. Animals use it for respiration, release carbon dioxide, which the plants need.
A beautiful cycle.
Okay, energy, check.
Yeah.
But what about making proteins? Proteins are needed for everything, right?
Absolutely. From building structures to speeding up reactions to transporting molecules, proteins are the workhorses.
And I remember it involves DNA and something called RNA.
You got it. It's a two-step process.
Yeah.
Transcription and translation.
Transcription first.
Happens in the nucleus. It's basically copying the genetic info from DNA onto a molecule called messenger RNA, or mRNA, like transcribing a recipe onto a note card.
So mRNA carries those instructions out of the nucleus to the ribosomes.
To those protein factories. That's where translation happens. The ribosomes read that mRNA, which is like a coded message, and they use it to build a chain of amino acids.
Amino acids, those are the building blocks in proteins, right?
Exactly. Think of the ribosome as a construction crew following a blueprint. mRNA is the blueprint, amino acids are the building materials.
And the order of those amino acids determines what kind of protein you get.
Precisely. That sequence determines its shape and ultimately its job. It's like molecular origami folding into that specific 3D structure.
So we go from DNA to RNA to protein. It's fascinating. But cells don't just make proteins, they need to make more of themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cell division is crucial for growth, repair, reproduction. We've got mitosis and meiosis.
Okay, so mitosis versus meiosis, what's the difference?
Mitosis, that's like making a perfect copy of a cell.
Yeah.
Two identical daughter cells from one parent cell. For growth, repair.
So when we get a cut, that's mitosis helping to fix it.
Exactly. Each new cell needs a full set of chromosomes, and mitosis makes sure that happens. It's a carefully controlled process, several stages, so everything gets copied right.
And meiosis.
Meiosis, that's for sexual reproduction. It's what makes those special cells, the gamete, sperm, and egg cells. They only have half the number of chromosomes.
Why half?
Because when sperm and egg combine, you want the right total number of chromosomes in the offspring, half from each parent.
So meiosis is like shuffling the genetic deck.
Exactly. It's all about genetic diversity, crucial for a species to adapt and survive.
Okay, mitosis for copying, meiosis for shuffling.
It's amazing, right?
Right.
But there's more. Cells also have ways of regulating their own death.
Cell death. Wait, why would they need to do that?
It's actually crucial for shaping tissues during development, getting rid of damaged or infected cells, keeping things healthy overall.
Like a built-in quality control system.
You got it. Two main types, apoptosis and necrosis.
Lay it on me.
Apoptosis, that's programmed cell death. Super organized. The cell basically dismantles itself neatly.
Controlled demolition.
Perfect. Necrosis, that's cell death due to like an injury or disease. It's more like an explosion.
So apoptosis, planned retirement. Necrosis, unfortunate accident.
Exactly. And apoptosis, that's super important in tons of stuff. From how we develop in the womb to how our immune system works. Like, when we're developing in the womb, apoptosis helps shape our fingers and toes by getting rid of the webbing between them.
Wow, so cell death is a totally normal, even essential part of life.
It is, and it highlights, again, how complex and interconnected everything is.
Okay, we've covered so much, from basic chemistry to the inner workings of cells. But now I'm thinking, how do all these cells work together to make, a whole person?
That's where we go to the next level. Tissues.
It's like, whoa, all this is going on inside us all the time.
Right. And it all builds,
Right.
Cells make tissues make organs, and organs make up the different systems in our body.
So if tissues are like those teams, organs are like whole departments.
Exactly. Like, take the heart. Mostly cardiac muscle tissue, but it's also got connective tissue, nervous tissue, epithelial tissue lining those chambers.
All working together to keep that blood pumping.
It's amazing.
What are some other organs, just so we're clear?
Well, you've got the lungs for breathing, the stomach and intestines breaking down all that food, liver filtering toxins, making bile, kidneys cleaning the blood, and of course the brain, the control center for the whole nervous system.
Each one with its own job, but they're all connected, relying on each other.
That's where the organ systems come in. Groups of organs working together for a bigger purpose, like the circulatory system, heart, blood vessels, blood, all about transporting stuff around the body.
Oxygen, nutrients, all that good stuff.
Yeah. And you've got the respiratory system, digestive system, nervous system, endocrine system, so many.
Each system has its own specialty, but they all have to communicate, cooperate to keep things running smoothly.
Like an orchestra, right. Each section playing its part.
Love that analogy. So we've zoomed out from cells to tissues to organ systems, and it all comes together to create, well, us.
Yeah.
It's really incredible when you think about it.
It is, and it all comes back to those basic principles, organization, specialization, communication, interdependence.
We've seen those themes at every level, from the tiny cell to the whole human body.
It's not just biology, though, right? Think about ecosystems, different species all connected, depending on each other, even human societies, everyone contributing their skills and talents.
It's like interconnectedness is woven into everything.
It's a pretty powerful idea. We're all part of something bigger, and even small actions can have ripple effects.
Makes that personal reflection even more meaningful. The one about the missed connection with a friend.
It does. Life is precious, and those connections, they matter.
So learning about how life works, from those tiny cells to the whole organism, it gives you a whole new appreciation for everything, doesn't it?
And it really does.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of cells and all things connected, I have one question for our listeners. How will you take this knowledge and apply it to your own life?
Will you look at the world around you with a new sense of wonder, seeing those amazing processes happening in every living thing? Will you value those connections you have, knowing how precious they are?
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey. We hope you've learned something new, maybe even changed your perspective a little.
It's been a pleasure exploring with you.
Rest, no pillow for my head, nowhere to run from this, no way to forget.